So welcome back to Level Up TV, and this is the next VOD, but still on Grim Dungeons. Just before we get going, let's remember everybody's going to sign up and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/leveluptv. You're all going to go and like us at facebook.com/leveluptv, and you're going to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/leveluptv. Again, myself, Disrepute, with my good man Vor, who's demonstrating for us. He's got that kind of technical ability within him to follow my commands, so he's a good pet to have around, isn't he? So how you doing?
I don't follow anyone's commands.
Still here after our little delay, our little break in play in the VOD. Anyway, this is Grim Dungeons Excavated. It is our map guide to Grim Dungeons, the old DM14 from Quake 3. So let's get back on the action, Vor. Don't do that, it'll make people sick. We are going to move on to power-up play, how to defend power-ups, set up for them, counter them, attack them, run them, blah blah blah. First thing we're going to start off with is, you are controlling the red armor. How do you set up a successful defense of the battlesuit, Vor?
Well, of course, you can never predict that maybe a opposing team has decided to put pressure on your suit. Well, maybe you can predict it, but let's, for argument's sake, they haven't decided to come here super early and make it difficult for you. Assuming you get here first from red, you want someone to block this route from lower yellow into suit. Now, this is a nice position for the enemy to come and try and knock you off as you're making the jump either from or to the suit. So don't allow them in this way. The other place, of course, would be up at the rail. Wow, hadn't that reach. Anyway, don't allow the enemy to situate people here for, again, an easy shot towards the rail. So to keep this blocked off, don't probably want to push out as far as this, but just don't allow them in this way. And the other position that you have to be worried about, although maybe not so much, is people dropping down this hole. If they manage to drop down on here by coming through the shotgun room from quad, let's say, all of a sudden they're in a very dangerous position for you to have to deal with. So those are the key areas to block off at the suit. You want to keep the action, if there is going to be any, out of this room to give yourself a safe pickup of the power-up.
Very vulnerable position, of course, the battlesuit in, so anybody that gets in there with a weapon could potentially, just one rocket they could fire off could hit your battlesuit.
Doesn't even need to be direct, does it? I mean, if it's guy jumping to the suit, the slightest bit of splash could knock him into the void. You're slightly more durable when you've got the suit, but any hit while you're making these jumps over these platforms, it could just see you landing in that pink pit of doom.
Ooh, pink.
I don't know why it's pink.
Looks red to me, mate, but...
Well, I don't know, it's got a tinge of pink as far as I'm concerned. Look, it's more red over here, but that's more pink.
Okay, so the typical setup you would do, and probably the ideal setup, is the 4 players are positioned as so. So one blocking off this doorway. They can probably push out, start pushing out as they go down to that lower area, but not push too far. One player covering the rail position. Now, he wouldn't push too far here because the spawner behind him could just get a spawn, drop down, and start. Even just machine gun could be deadly towards that battlesuit. As he jumps across, you could knock him off with just machine gun. So you can't push out too far with this railgun position. The other 2 positions, you'd have one guy stacked and ready for the battlesuit, who would drop down the back probably and be standing on the ledge above the battlesuit.
Oh wow!
My goodness, Vor.
No, that never happened. Stop the VOD. Stop the VOD.
No, that's what you wanted to spawn here, right? So it's quicker.
Exactly.
So they would drop down just like Vor did, be waiting for the battlesuit. Now, bear in mind the position here. Now, for example,
this is vulnerable. Yeah.
It is very vulnerable. You have the 225s. You got it. There's danger from above, of course, if you don't control above your that situation. You've also got to watch players coming in from 3 more routes in front of you. Maybe from the main drop down, they might get spawned inside the red room and drop down there. They might get the rail position, the most dangerous position probably if they've got a long range weapon, and they could be rushing through from that lower doorway. Now, the position here you take up here, you've got to think about what you're doing. If you go to the left hand side, you've blocked off the viewpoint of the railer. So if there is a railer there, obviously you go and stand over here because he can't rail you if he stands at the rail position. Now, the drop down from above, you don't want to stand directly beneath it, because somebody could just look down from above, bam, rocket hits you. There is a little bit of a trick maybe that you would stand on the right hand side if you feel there's a threat from above and not from, say, the rail position, because generally when people drop down, they're running from, say, the shotgun doorway. They're going to be looking to that opposite side as they drop down, because that's the usual place people stand as well. So you can often catch people out by standing on that side of it. You've also got a sharper angle for that lower doorway, but as I say, you're vulnerable to the rail position.
Yeah, the thing you have to think about is if you've got people in the positions we've already mentioned, which is up at rail and pushed out in this doorway here. Now, if either of them die, you're obviously going to be aware of where the threat's coming from. If someone dies up at the rail, you know you need to watch out, because more than likely someone's going to be up there attempting to shoot you. Same with that position there.
One of the most dangerous things that can happen is they push in low with a lightning gun. Of course, they're coming from a lightning gun position, and then they can reach you when you're here. So you need to hit some really good rockets on them to block them off. Often you'll see players, they might have doubled up their pickups of rockets. They might have 20 odd shots, so they might just start spamming that lower doorway if they don't have a player there defending it. And that's obviously a viable way of defending it. They still can get players getting past that rocket spam, and as soon as they're into the more open area, they can start LGing you down. It's a bit more of a threat. So that'll be the 3 players so far. The 4th player...
Well, one thing I'd say is you don't really come down here and as such wait. I mean, you're not going to come down here 10 seconds before suit if you're the guy picking it up and wait on this back ledge necessarily. No need to, because you could just be putting yourself at risk. There's nothing worse than being up here waiting for suit that you've somehow mistimed and then losing your stack. Don't wait here for ages.
It really depends on the situation. I mean, often you have just picked up the red. Now, bearing in mind, you might pick up the red 24 seconds before the power-up spawns, because red's not then going to spawn again, so you almost have nothing to do, especially if your teammates are in ideal positions blocking off that rail and blocking off that lower doorway already. So you sort of might not have anything to do, but you always have to be wary of spawners inside the red room. There's of course 3 spawns, 1 by this drop down and then 2 at the rocket launcher end, so you've always got to be wary that they might spawn. One of your teammates might get a kill, they might spawn in there, and then they can drop down that main jump pad, most likely if they're from the rocket launcher, or if they really know it, they're going to rush in and drop down from above you. So it might be better just to stand above the gap. Maybe you want to go up there now anyway, Vor, for the 4th position. But if you are the stack player, you could just wait around sort of by that gap. But the 4th player should remain in the shotgun room. Now, bearing in mind, we already discussed in the previous VOD that you have to watch this room at all times anyway. They want to stay in this position. Ideally, they don't even need to go to battlesuit. They want to just stay as far pushed forwards in the shotgun room as they can. Just keeping an eye on this spawn, obviously, keeping an eye on the top of the drop down. But they want to just block off any kind of attack or runners coming through this room. And we've seen some great battlesuit steals and saves by people coming through this shotgun room, and there's no defense. So they just come in last second, run through, drop down. They're on top of the battlesuit. They don't even need to kill you waiting to pick it up. They can just dive on it if they've got the time. Land on it before you. They've got it. Doesn't matter if they die. If their team's getting the quad, they've got that big advantage already of having at least 1 power up active on the map. So always important to be wary of obviously where the spawns are around, where the routes in are, and block them off as far as you can. Even if you can't stop them coming through, say the lower entrance guy is being attacked, he's going to give you an early warning that they're coming from that position, and you can obviously, the guy at rail can get up to the rail position, he can start spamming rockets down at that position, or the guy at the battlesuit starts spamming rockets to cover it, so you can be prepared for it. So it's always push out as far as you possibly can, and it's safe to. That would be the ideal setup for a battlesuit.
Sure would.
So
that's from the point of view of, you're not dealing with a situation, let's say, where quad is 20 seconds before, 10 seconds before. This is power-ups are still synced up and everything normal.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of variables going on in a map with double power-ups, and we probably can't discuss them all, but essentially that's power-ups at the same time roughly, and you're not even being aggressed, you're just going to lock it down, secure it. This is often what you see if both teams get spawns either side of the map and the first power-ups, and they just want to secure their own power-up. That's the kind of ideal setup you'll see from both teams, and it's the kind of setup you want to try and reach every time if you're not going to attack them on their power-up. So if we go to the quad and do the quad defense setup, so you have to remember that there's always the risk that teams will come in below. So the longer you can keep someone down here, spotting if anybody's going to come in from low up this bounce pad, the better. So that's the first thing to realise. But usually quad, you have to commit 4 people to it to secure it, to make sure it's secure. You don't really need somebody sitting low when it's just going to spawn up, even if they wait a while. Usually, as we discussed earlier, a good position to stand with the stacked guy ready for power up is going to be where Vor is now, because it's a safe position. He's not going to take any damage. You can cover the bounce pad if he's got a shaft. He's going to catch people out who are rushing down the corridor, and if he uses his sound effectively, he can peek round and take them out. He also covers that doorway. If anybody manages to jump through the window, say, and run round, or come from the lower route and attack, he can cover that tight doorway. And obviously you see them coming up that first staircase in the distance, so it's not just like they appear in the doorway suddenly. You're going to see their heads pop over there, so you can start spamming early. So this is probably the best position for the power-up player to sit in and conserve his ammo and his health and armor.
Yeah, because of course you have to be aware that depending on the situation, they might still have a railer pressuring you from here, even while quad is due up within a couple of seconds, because he'd like nothing more than to sit in this position and hit a rail as it's picked up or is going to pick it up corners. Then they'll feel that if they can hit that rail shot, then they're going to have the advantage over you in the power-up play.
So that's one area you were thinking about. So the next key thing you can do is push onto the doorway. Ideally, if you can push through the doorway and push them as far back as possible, you might not be able to get right in the shotgun room, but even if you're just in this 25 room, that's going to stop any threat of damage being dealt out on your quad carrier.
You don't want to go too aggressive if you're playing this position. Let's say you're 10 or 15 seconds to go to quad still. You don't want to be pushing all the way around and dying and still having 10 seconds left till quad. That's
the worst case
scenario. The worst thing
scenario
you could do. I mean, it's ideal if you feel you can pick up the kill and you do that, but it's safer really to just be in a position like this or wherever you feel you can push to, but don't throw your life away. Not when there's still an opportunity for someone to kill you and then look to rail or to spam whatever they've got onto the quad.
And when we're 10 to 15 seconds before the power-up, the objective isn't for you to necessarily get a kill in that position, it's to stop them aggressing or doing damage to your quad. So just spamming rockets around the corner, you know, you can almost waste all your clip just spamming them back and stopping them come through. After a few rockets in a row, they're not going to even try and get around the corner anyway, probably. Grenades, obviously a great weapon to utilise in this tight spot. Just spamming them around. Remember to keep changing the angles you're shooting them at. Don't just shoot the same angle all the time, because the grenades will just end up in one little spot and there won't be any real threat to them at all. Remember to change the range up that you're shooting the grenades as well. So you want to have some that are maybe bouncing a bit closer to you, so they won't be going fully round the corner, they'll just be, say, just ahead of you. So if they did manage to make it past your further grenades, they're going to run into a grenade. So think about it like that. So remember, the objective can be just to block them off from getting into this room.
Yeah, that's the objective after all. You want the cleanest quad pickup that you can get, because you won't always have someone with 100 armor on this side of the map. They might only have 50 at yellow armor, maybe some shards. So if a player on the other team gets into this position and hits the quad as it's picked up, you're in a weaker position than you should be, and the quad is going to struggle going up against a battlesuit.
So it's a couple of positions. Now, it's not... There's no... Because this is just kind of an open area and there's no absolute ideal positions to stand, you do want some guy by this sort of doorway on this opposite side, because they need to keep an eye on that bounce pad, just in case. Or indeed in the spawner in that corridor. They can often get... If you kill someone, they'll spawn in that corridor, and then they can run round and try and aggress on the battlesuit. Oh, sorry, on the quad position. So just keeping in this sort of doorway area, but the main threat is probably actually going to come through that doorway ahead. Although if you've blocked it off effectively, there's less to worry about, and you can maybe start moving towards your route of destination anyway. Yeah. So you just sort of want to pack this quad area with the other two players to make sure it's secure. But ideally, if you block off that doorway with a rocket, there's not a massive amount of threat if that's blocked off. So you can have somebody underground to stop the other route of entry. So you could leave just 2 at the quad, 1 on the doorway ahead to the shotgun room, and then 1 underground at the yellow armors. That would probably be the ideal pushed out position. And I don't think there's too much more to say about quad setup or the
thing to say
setup.
that kind of talks about both in the situation we described is obviously, if both teams followed what we described, then there'd be a kind of stalemate on the pickups, and both would get just a clean pickup. But often is the case if you're playing a game. Normally, the first power-ups aren't particularly contested, but as you progress throughout the match, teams kind of identify opportunities to, push onto the battlesuit or push onto the quad, taking the various routes we've said. So if the quad pickups for one team have been totally unpressured, they're not going to, on the 3rd or 4th power up or whatever, they're not going to actually all sit back in these defensive positions. They will actually start looking to move out. The guy who was defending this doorway is going to realise there's nobody ever coming through to quad this route. I'm going to look to actually push in and try and take the battlesuit from here. Depending on how the game is going, things start to change. Normally the first power-ups are defensive, but it doesn't always stay that way.
So we sort of talked about ideal kind of setup and defense of those power-ups. There's obviously variance on the positions, and obviously reading the situation you might need to have all 4 at quad or whatever, but fundamentally you want to block off your opponents from getting anywhere near the area. So the further you can push out in a safe way, the better, and pre-prepare the pathway that the quad's going to take. The earlier the quad knows which route he's going to take because he's safe, then the better, because if we're standing at quad, I'm going to pick it up here, and Vor's going to get this quad, right? And so he's going to say, like, I'm going to get quad when it comes up. It's going to be like 5 seconds. I'm going to go through high. Now, we've already got someone through that doorway that's locked it down. That's fine. So he knows already he can start to creep, because there's only 5 seconds left. There's not going to be enough time for them to kill him and then get through and aggress the quad. He can start to creep and start moving through to the shotgun room and then through into red, ready to clear that path, ready for the quad. Anybody else in this room would obviously know that they're going to go in that direction as well, or if they're defending low, they know they've got to get ready in a position to start drawing fire away and attacking from the rail position. So the earlier the quad can call which direction you're going to go, and if you're spread out effectively, then you know you can clear that pathway forwards as well. And it's the same with the battlesuit as well, although the battlesuit almost, I feel like, is a little bit more limited in that sense. If you're going to go low, you could be almost the objective of the battlesuit is to make sure they take out the quad, because the quad gets the frags, and the battlesuit is almost a counter to that, and then it's control areas. You're going to get frags with it as well, but it's not as simple. You still need to do the same damage as you would normally. You can be a bit more aggressive, but you're not going to necessarily get masses of more frags like you would with the quad. So in terms of the battlesuit, if we go to that end of the map, Vor, and we're just talking about sort of getting ready to move out, if we had that locked position like we talked about, the battlesuit might say, and usually they sync it up, they say, right, I'm going up for the next red, and they go and get the red, and they block off the quad at the shotgun room, or they go up to red and block off the quad. But they might say, I'm going to go low on this occasion. So whoever's standing here,
that would often happen if, say, the suit's been picked up and doesn't have any armor, and he has a strong feeling that the quad is already up the top of his bounce pad.
Yeah. So while you don't necessarily need too much support with the battlesuit, the person that's low already, when he knows that, and it's a few seconds before, he knows he's done his defensive job on the battlesuit. They know they're going to get the battlesuit. Now Vor could start pushing out low and trying to secure the yellow, ready for that battlesuit. Then, oh look, the yellow's up. Vor's secured it, and then the battlesuit's going to take it and then move on to his run. So then you're thinking a step ahead once you've secured a zone. Yeah. So we've set up either quad and battlesuit effectively. What's next to discuss? It's going to have to be how you would attack those power-ups against setups, and how you might try and... So say that's the perfect setup, it's going to be difficult to break that down and get in. Obviously the weak point is you've only got one player in this shotgun room blocking you off in that ideal setup, but you don't know that. They might have put too high, so it's going to be difficult. So how do you counter a battlesuit setup? Well, the trick, I mean the fundamental trick is you need to get there earlier. Then they're ready and prepared for it. That's
I don't know. Maybe it's too many different things to think about, but we can just talk kind of generally. I mean, if you're playing on the yellow side and you want to challenge suit, then obviously one of the first things you would try is to see if you can break into this rail position and just get a position where you can shoot the suit. Now, you might not be able to pick the suit up in this position, but you've got a high chance if you're in here, you've got no pressure from anyone from red in this area, then you've got a high chance of being able to shoot the suit void. If you're thinking more about actually trying to take the suit when you're playing the yellow side, then you want to try and break in at this route, and you know it's a very difficult thing to do usually because you normally meet resistance here, or there's often players standing in a position like this ready to spam you back. But you know, this position offers you a chance at least to try and get in here and, you know, jump across. We've seen people do it with amazing rocket jumps, and you know, and a bit of luck, and you can actually get in and steal the suit.
The trick on this map, more than any, is you're generally not going to get in last second against a good team who's set up well to steal the power up. So we're looking at attacking
like
an
a 1
area.
in 100 play.
Yeah, we're looking at attacking an area before they get set up. Now, as we talked about before, there's 2 minutes between the power-ups, but the power-ups say 30 seconds. That leaves 1 minute 30. But generally teams are going to start thinking about it 30 seconds before setting up at the earliest. And the reason they do that is because of the item times. So obviously armors is 25, weapons are 30. It's sort of around that amount of time. They're going to get the last ones, they're going to set up, or the last ones before. The good teams will always think ahead, and a couple of armors before, they'll send a player into a early scouting position down here to make sure it's secured out and to make sure a team won't get in. And that's a game of chance really, because you're giving up maybe a more defensive position for general map play to secure the power up. But obviously you can assume on the other side of the map they're starting to think about securing their positions ready for defense of their power up, or they're thinking about moving in to attack yours. So that would be the right thing to do. But for a lot of teams, they don't think about it until about 30 seconds before. So the ideal kind of time to attack and get ready for a power up is maybe 40 seconds before the power up spawns, and that seems like quite a significant amount of time before to obviously give up a locked position or whatever. But the way it works is not necessarily that you're going to get directly in and lock it down straight away, but if you rush in, attack, take over their position, they're not quite set up right yet, they're not fully stacked. If you can do all the damage and get the frags then you might die yourself, but you'll have enough time to spawn in again. You might have 10-15 seconds left then to move in and take what then does become an open last second grab of a power up. That's generally sort of the idea. Or if you just get in and absolutely dominate them, you can just lock it down for the next, because battles are going to take 10-15 seconds anyway. So if you've gone in 40 seconds before, you've got 25 seconds or whatever, you're just going to have to hold it for.
Yeah, and let's say you are coming in, I mean, in a situation like Battlesuit happens to be 10-15 seconds before quad, which is, something that can happen. It's slightly rarer than quad being. In fact, no. Yeah. Confusing myself there. Quad is often the one that is delayed on this map. So Battlesuit quite often is 10-15 seconds before quad. So if you're coming in maybe from yellows, you need to think about positions you can be in to defend against those that are coming in from red. And as we already said, up at the rail would be one, because you know that they're probably going to try and secure the rail as well. But if I fail the jump this time, positioning yourself up here, and you have to rocket jump in most cases to get here if you're the team playing yellows, you can be ready to ambush inevitable drop down from people from red who are looking to get in position for this suit.
if you're really effective at moving in silently and without giving any hints, you can get into positions like this and completely shock them and get easy unreturned damaged frags.
And this is often something you will have to do if Battlesuit is well ahead of the quad, because you can't really allow a free suit pickup if the suit is, let's say, 10 seconds before quad. I mean, all that's going to happen in that case is the red team would most likely drop down, take suit, head over to quad with plenty of time to pick it up. You are playing the yellow side and suit is first, you really have to actually come and contest it.
So the most important thing with power-up setups is the timing of when you attack, really, rather than the positions necessarily. Now obviously the positions are going to matter once you're there, but if you can't get there in time, if you get there 5 seconds before it spawns, they're already going to be entrenched. You're not going to get in there anyway. So it's all about the timing, and pushing it earlier and earlier, it might be a risk, but if you can get in before they set up a strong defensive line, that's going to work out as an effective ploy. Obviously also then you might become to force them into going earlier, in which case their general map play defense system is going to be weaker, which you can exploit. You can get in behind them and maybe steal their last resources before the power-up spawns. So there's a bit of a cat and mouse with the timing issue, but as Vor says, so basically if, say, the power-up times are equal, you might be looking at maybe a 40 seconds before they're properly entrenched, pushing in and attacking. And we're not just talking about attacking the power-up area, but they're half of the map. Obviously the yellow arm is very close to the quad, so it's sort of one and the same, but the Battlesuit, you might think, oh yeah, we'll just attack in 40 seconds early here. That might be a bit too risky. You might need to attack in, say, the rail position, get into the red and do some serious damage there, and that might count as your your early attack on the power-up. So in terms of desynced power-ups, as Vor said, just emphasize that point. If Battlesuit is first, you can afford to leave one guy waiting for the quad and 3 guys attack the Battlesuit, because Battlesuit's first, they're going to have to commit their team to it to defend it. If they don't, oh dear, they're going to have to assume that you're going to have to go for it. Whatever power-up's first.
Anyway.
Yeah, that was the plan. Whatever the plan. What? I don't know what I'm talking about now. You lost me. Whatever the whatever power-up's first is gonna be.
And it's normally
the priority of the map. Yeah.
On this map, it's very rare that the quad is before the suit, like by a significant margin, because normally you don't see teams purposely delay the Battlesuit. Normally, we'll see suit picked up on its whatever time it happens to be, and then you see the team who are delaying the quad, they just wait. They wait until they're at the last safe moment to take quad, normally when they see the suit in this doorway here, or if they are taken by surprise when the suit comes up this bounce pad. It's very rare that you're going to have a team do it on purpose where the suit is after the quad. It does happen, but it's not normally done by design. It's normally where whoever's going for the pickup of the suit has been knocked in the void, and then there's not someone else there ready to pick it up.
So now looking at quad and the way you might attack this area from the red position. Again, kind of the earlier you pressure, the more chance you have of success, because once a team's entrenched in a defensive position, it's going to be difficult. And they don't really want to go to a full-on defense position before it's time, because they're away from the resources. If you're locked inside the doorway, spamming rockets and that, you're not actually able to farm off that armor. If you're standing inside the quad room by the quad, the yellow armor's through in another room, the LG's through in another room. They're not that far away, but going over to them puts you massively out of position, in fact. So as soon as they're in a defensive position, they're not thinking about those resources anymore, because they've taken the last ones, and they're standing in an entrenched position that's going to be difficult, more difficult to break through.
Yeah, you don't want to leave yourself with 10 seconds or so to try and break down a good solid quad setup.
So again, we're looking at something like 40 seconds before, where they've still got a couple of items to pick up, and they're not even considering that you're going to attack at this point, because it seems like the last power up only just finished at that point still.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, an ideal kind of attack, now there's obviously so many variations, we can't go through them all, is pressure from multiple points. So the first thing is you want pressure from this doorway, ideally a railer.
Yeah, because, depends on the match situation. If it's the first time you've attacked quad early, then they won't necessarily be ready for it. When you've attacked quad early for the third or fourth time in the same game, they're more prepared for it. But, this would be no different to what you're normally doing by pressuring this area from the red. If you happen to have a rail or other guns, you can often hit spam rockets in this area, but this is nothing different to what you'd be doing anyway. The variation would be that you'd be looking to have people from red looking to win over this lower area, let's say, with 30 to 40 seconds to go till quad, and then they're going to look to push this corridor and start to try and win over the area. And if you've got support from a railer here, then you know to expect them in this area. And if you've got, someone with a red, then they have a very good chance of coming into this area with, with a teammate as well, not just on their own, and look to win this over. Obviously, you can expect to go up against a lightning gun, which isn't an easy opponent in this area, but you hopefully you win it over with multiple armoured players with weapons, and you should have a slight advantage from being at the red.
One of the other ways of attacking that area, if you can't get in low, is to go through that doorway and just jump through the window. Often,
yeah, you can overload this position.
People don't expect it.
Don't even think about what's happening ahead, and then just straight into here.
And you'll find generally when you attack like that, they become pinned into this quad room, and they're taking damage from 2 angles at least then. And there's always the option that you can send someone low to go up the main bounce pad as well and come in behind them. That's always a big threat when they're... because they don't expect that one either. Because the bounce pad...
You have to definitely say though that if you're trying to overload the front, you could potentially send all 4 players this way, but this is quite a dangerous way to send 4 people because very tight corridor here. There's not a lot of room for 4 people to come in from this direction. It can be done. We've seen teams do it perfectly, catch the other team out where they're not ready with their team, because if you do it early enough, then it's very unlikely that they're ready here with 3 or 4 players to defend against a 4-man rush. But it's probably a higher likelihood that you can send people in low early, start to surround them more.
Maybe
so you
even
can send 2
take
or
one of
3
these
in.
yellows.
Yeah, exactly. You can steal the lower yellow, which leaves them short of armour at the quad. You can potentially steal this yellow if you get in through this doorway, but it's taking them from multiple angles, which is generally favourable. You could even do it with 2 and 2. 2 from the shotgun doorway, and then 2 from this doorway. You come in at the same time, and one of the 2 is most likely to get into an attacking position right up against the quad. And once you've won the area over, there is still the concern of bending it, because if you've attacked early, 30 to 40 seconds as we recommended, there is still a chance for the other team to come back.
Yeah, and that's the difficult balancing act, is you need at least one player who's going to survive out with armour and health and weapons to defend it after that point, because you might potentially all get in but be pretty weak, and the fresh spawners might be able to take you out.
You also need to be careful about committing your whole team to these kind of attacks, because let's say you make this attack and come away having all 4 of you die. That kind of leaves you in a bad position. Maybe you'll get lucky and the items will be up in the red room or wherever, and you can have someone ready for the battle suit, but they kill all 4 of you on a failed attack. They might push through, take you red, and then you're in serious trouble and may not come away with any power up.
In terms of moving in TDM into any area, you have to have good spatial awareness and an understanding of the positions and angles that your teammates are at. So say we're coming through the doorway there, There's no good you all just standing on the left side or something, because one, you'll be blocking off each other's shots, and two, if one person goes ahead, say Vor's ahead of everyone, and he starts diving around inside here, he doesn't get forwards enough, so he's just blocking off this corridor. How are you going to shoot past him?
Exactly, you can't. You need to have players who are, similarly to how we said on DM7, you need to have people who accept that they're likely to die in the attack, but their actions are going to give the attack more chance of succeeding. So if you're the player at the front, you can't dodge around in this position because everyone behind you is going to be unable to do anything. So even if it results in you dying, you need to try and get forward around these corners, doing as much damage as you can, and then your teammates are going to hopefully come in behind you and use the distraction and the damage you've done to then win the area over.
I mean, ideally, if we're going to attack and jump through the window, the first people through are just going to dive through that window straight away, get out the way of your other teammates, and already they would have noticed them do that, and they'll, at least half their team's going to have to stop watching the main door and watch that LG door. So you've already had an effect by just jumping through a window, even if you've done no damage or taken no damage or anything, nothing's really happened. You've just moved their line of sight to have to watch something else.
Yeah, the distraction it causes is, shouldn't be underestimated, because no matter how organised a team is, they might, maybe some teams do, but they aren't going to be necessarily prepared for, well, someone's jumped through that window or whatever, who's going to be the one to deal with it? It's going to shift the focus of all of them temporarily.
Yeah.
So, rather than just try and stand around in here and fight, likely to just get you killed, and then teammates behind you can't do anything. You should look to just make things as chaotic as possible for the defending team.
I mean, we could go through some other variations of but it's just generally down to numbers of how many you might commit to one area or when, and just a focus on when to time an attack. Usually you've just taken a red, there might be another red spawning before the next power up, but after that penultimate red before the power up spawn is probably when you want to go and attack. Knowing the time of the next red is important to remember, because if you die you're going to be on it. But it's all about the timing, choosing when to attack early before they're entrenched, and then splitting your team up to create different angles and not getting in each other's way. But there's not really more we can go on about in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a 5-hour video of every possible quad and battlesuit permutation, but
yeah, it's not really worth it, because they're all essentially the same things you have to focus on. So now we'll talk about Vor picks up the quad, and he's going to choose to run through this doorway, and it's something we see time and time again. We have
just think about what the situation might be. Let's say quad and battlesuit are at the same time, then yeah, the standard play would be for me to take this quad and be straight through in here to hopefully meet the suit. This kind of point.
Maybe if he's even delayed, he might come up the battlesuit, up the bounce pad just as you've got into the room. You've got shaft, ideal.
Yeah, if they don't get an instant pickup, get straight off the battlesuit pickup point, then you might catch them on the bounce pad.
Yeah, but it's still a little bit risky if it's the same time they're picked up.
There should be mentioned that I wouldn't expect, if I'm the guy picking up the quad, I don't want to be the first person through this doorway. There should always be a teammate ahead of you, because, as we've said before, there's ambush points here and around here. You don't want the quad first through, because potentially they can lose every bit of armor they've got. There's a guy in here waiting to ambush. Although, having said that, a smart player will actually let, and if nobody checks this as they go through, a smart player would just sit here and not fire until the quad through, and then everyone turns around in shock.
Yeah.
You can probably find demos where that's happened many times.
So that's essentially two tips. If you're the team that's got quad and you're the guy going through forwards, your job isn't just to run ahead, it is to check as you go through. So just look to your left. If there's anybody there, obviously you're going to shoot.
It's very quick. It doesn't slow you down. It's just check. Yeah. I mean, you'd have your back exposed there and then check again, and then you're through to help the suit. Sorry, help the quad fight the suit in this room.
And then the other tip is, obviously, if you're trying to counter the quad, don't shoot the first guy that comes through the door. You're waiting for the quad shot. And it might be that one guy runs through and then no one else comes, because the quad's decided to go a different way, but at least then you've got the call and say quad's not coming main route or high or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And then the variation on this is quad is first, and you have time to get to the suit. Now, time to get to the suit is anything above 6-second delay. Really, it's hard to get reliably from quad to suit in less than 6 seconds. But you can take the quad, and then you've got a choice of routes. You can either drop straight down here and go through to suit, or you can take this route. Obviously, this route is favourable if the yellow armour is coming up, or if you need the lightning gunning, it's up at the time. But you would drop down. You can either then go this way from the rail, depends on the weapons you have, of course. Look to make a shot here, although this is a very passive way of doing it. Now, if there is enough of a delay, you should be far more aggressive.
I mean, you could drop off from the rail position. It's quite aggressive.
Yeah,
push.
you can. You can either come in low with the quad, which is I don't know. I think it's slightly safer going in low rather than dropping off. I mean, you can potentially be hit as you drop and maybe knocked into the void.
That's why you need to think about the way you drop off this, and it's probably better to drop to the right.
And depending on how much of a delay there is, if there is enough time for you to slightly slow down and make sure you can clear the area out. I mean, you might have people defending the suit in a position like this. Because you have to bear in mind that the defensive positions kind of change when the quad is well ahead of suit. But if you can, clear it out. But if there's literally someone about to pick suit up, you should focus on killing them and then dealing with everyone else. Obviously, it is an area where you are vulnerable to being knocked in the void. Totally surrounds this platform, of course. So, there will be times where you get in here with quad. You might kill the suit, but then you might get knocked in the void as well. And that's unfortunate, but, at the end of the day, at least you've got rid of the battle suit. But, it's very easy once you get in here with a quad. The suit is very unlikely to survive. The only chance they have of getting away is if the player is extremely good with rocket jumps and immediately picks the suit up, rocket jumps backwards onto this back platform, and then somehow makes it up that gap. But if you're shooting them with lightning gun, they're more than likely just going to be pinned against this back wall and can't go anywhere, or you've knocked them in the void.
The other routes with quad, of course, is going through the doorway through shotgun. If you had somebody leading and there was no resistance particularly, and it's like 6 seconds before battle, so you've got two options. You can try and drop down the back and maybe kill the players that are ready to get battlesuit. You could then double it up or leave it for someone, or just knock it off as it's picked up from behind. Or the other route, of course, is to drop down the main bounce pad, land there and catch the battlesuit. Depending on the time, you might catch it in the air, rocket jumping, which you can just knock it into the void. Remember, if you do that, don't keep firing too long. Just tap
because
fire.
Because you're going to put them on the back wall.
Yeah, which you don't want. You want to kill the battlesuit. You don't unless you're really anal and want every frag, because obviously you don't get a frag on your scoreboard if you void it, but you want to just get it down the void if possible.
Yeah, so typically with a quad, it wouldn't be much more than a short burst of LG like that to just kill their momentum forwards in the air, and then they just drop straight into the void. Shoot too long, and you'd actually push them onto the back wall.
So that's sort of the options to killing it. Obviously, if it's synced up enough that they could get up this bounce pad in time, as you come through the doorway, you have to watch that bounce pad and aim to push them back in the air against that wall, and then just LG them down in that corner as they drop. Sometimes it can be a bit difficult. You might just LG them round the gap, so they might actually survive up high.
Yeah, ideally you'll have the suit stuck in this corner here, or this corner here.
Yeah. Pinned
against this wall, unable to dodge effectively, and hopefully their teammates don't come to their rescue. So,
yeah, that's kind of the way you would be thinking about quad. Now, obviously, objectives with quad.
Well, one more thing I'd say is, if you have quad and run into suit at this point here, like you've heard him and you can see the glow having come through this doorway, you do not want to fight the suit in this area unless you are supremely confident that you're going to hit a perfect stream of LG. Because this is just perfect territory for a suit to fight you. They don't have to worry much about the splash damage from their own rockets or anything. And, you know, if you watch TDM regularly, you'd have to say about 9 times out of 10 in this position, the suit is going to come out victorious against quad.
So that's again about understanding your surroundings, the position you're in, where you have an advantage, because generally speaking, quad's going to have LG in a tight condition as well. Battlesuit's going to have rocket launcher in those tight corridors, who already rocket launcher advantage over lightning gun. Never mind a battlesuit who's got all that extra defense, who's going to survive a lot longer, get a lot more rocket shots off against a quad who isn't more buffed than his opponent, he's just more powerful in the damage he deals. So always about the situation you're in, thinking about that and the way it plays out. So the objectives with the quad, Vor, I mean, same as any map, isn't it? Win over the opponent's held position, the primary position that you want it. As you said, both sides of the map are relatively equal in terms of stack, so you might have a primary position as the yellow, but even so, taking over the red for a period of time is an advantage because you're taking away what your opponent's comfortable with and their stack.
Yeah, I mean, typically you'd expect, you know, with teammates ahead of you to come in, and then you'll encounter the battlesuit somewhere around here, hopefully. If you encounter them in the shotgun room, you're already at a disadvantage, and you might have to think about backing off, or, you know, hope that you are hitting extremely well. But once you get in here, you're going to need your teammates' help as well, because remember, you do more damage, but you take the normal amount of damage, so you are vulnerable to the teammates of the battlesuit, even after the battlesuit is dead. Now, your primary focus initially is normally the battlesuit, because normally they're going to be putting pressure on you, but you have to worry about their teammates as well. In any opportunity you get to hide from the battlesuit, if the suit is being too passive, you should use that advantage, that time, to take out the suit's teammates.
Yeah.
Don't be too obsessed with fighting the battlesuit, because there are times where, you know, maybe it's a guy who doesn't normally run the battlesuit for your opponent. Maybe they're not that confident at taking you directly head on with it. Now, if that is the case, you should use that to your advantage and try and mop up his teammates, and then take him out as and when. You have to read the situation, because if you focus too much on the suit, the teammates are going to be shooting you as well. I mean, quite often you'll come through this doorway with quad, you might see a railer in the distance. That's something you should immediately be slightly worried about, because, you know, you can potentially have a good stack from playing the yellow side of the map, but you're not invulnerable. It's only going to take 3 rails in a lot of cases to kill you.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at the objectives of the quad, I'd say it's a little bit different to the battlesuit, despite them sort of being along the same lines of being the power-ups, and obviously location, position, control is most important. But quad really gets the frags, and its focus is to get frags on this. Now, obviously, the battlesuit is the key frag, because battlesuit is a danger to quad. But battlesuit's not a massive danger to anybody else while quad's alive, because battlesuit's main objective is to stop the quad killing all his teammates. So the quad really has the initiative, the impetus really here, where the quad is looking for the frags and the battlesuit's the counter to the quad. That's the way I view it. And actually I think the battlesuit has a bit of an advantage if they meet in a fight, so that's why it balances well. So as a quad, if there's opportunities to get other frags, get them, as well as trying to take out the battlesuit. Don't ignore the other people just to try and hunt down the battlesuit, because you're losing out on the advantage quad offers, which is really quick kills, eliminating your opponents as quick as possible and building up the frags. And the overall map objective is to get more frags than your opponents, remember, so keeping that in mind. Battlesuit, its objective is first and foremost to kill the quad if it's alive, to block it off, to stop it doing anything, and then they both go into a more the standard kind of objective, which is to obviously get more kills, but to win over the key locations. So say quad's moving in here, the battlesuit's dead, he's going to clear out this room, lock it down. Teammate, get in there and get in those defensive positions we talked about earlier, and that sort of...
As soon as that happens, the quad is then, if there's any time left on it, most likely going to try and move back to quad usually. See if they can sit in this position.
Yeah. So on this map, and generally how it all plays out, is the primary objective for both power-ups is to win over that red armor, and the secondary objective, in terms of this is area control objectives, is to get to that a yellow, either upper or lower. Upper is a better option because you've got LG freshly spawning, good weapon to get kills on really effectively and quickly. You've got a yellow armor, and of course you've got the health. And also you've only got to really watch two sort of angles, the bounce pad and then the sort of where the yellow armor spawn is, and the bounce pad at quad are the two sort of angles you've got to watch, whereas lower area it's a bit more open to being suddenly rushed on. But either one you can hold, and then you get a massive advantage. Now remember, the armor differences are not that great, so suddenly taking away 50% of their armor control and leaving them, say, with one yellow, you're getting a massive benefit from that, and you should mop up quite a few kills in controlling, say, the upper yellow LG area with that power up, or the end of the power up. So I mean, essentially the objective of that is to win it over and then to hold it as long as you can, and even thinking about a strategy around that. So you're going to eventually get whittled down, lose a bit of health, armor, and you'll look a bit vulnerable at that LG yellow position, in which case you can either back off from that, you can commit suicide stealing items away from your opponents and not dropping any yourself, or you can replace that held position with a teammate. Now if one team loses that yellow, do you want to go to the yellow armor? If one team, say, loses control of upper or lower yellow armor, and your team, say one team's got control of red and the upper yellow, the team out of control of the upper yellow, they need to immediately make a decision. Do we rush back as a 4 and win over this upper yellow, or do we take advantage of the fewer numbers at the red and attack the red? And that's where you need a tactics scholar to make that decision as quick as possible. The more you waste time and don't do either, or split your team between the two, you're going to lose frags, you're going to lose control, and you're going to lose an opportunity to come back, and the time's ticking down before the next power-ups come in. So you need to have somebody make that decision, make that call based on their experience, based on what they know is going on around them, as quick as possible. Generally speaking, if you've just been destroyed by a power-up, your best bet is to just cess down after the power-up's expired this area, because it'll probably only have one player trying to hold it, and if you send all 4 people, even if you haven't got weapons, you should be able to eliminate him. So that's usually
or at least
the best
force
option.
them to abandon the position.
And we have seen teams in the past commit 2 players, or 1 player right in here and then 1 player like really close to support, in which case it might be much more difficult to take this, but it might be easier to attack at the rail position and take over the red. So it's a shifting in control, and you've got to make these split decisions about which area to attack and the vulnerability of which area it has at the time. In which case, generally on this area you would just rush it as a 4 from any angle if you can, and rush from 4 people. On this area you can come from the bounce pad obviously, and then down by that yellow, so you are a couple of angles, but you need to rush it back and win it quickly. If you're going to attack the red, you're probably not going to be attacking from the shotgun room, you're going to be attacking from the rail position and maybe the main bounce pad. And when you attack the red, have we done attacking the red yet? No, we haven't, have we?
No, we've done putting pressure on it.
Yeah, so we've done attacking the yellow room, but so yeah, you want to attack the red. So let's go into attacking the red position at any point during the map. The best way to attack it, usually you're going to find it difficult to get through the shotgun room because you're just sort of going straight on, head-on attack with somebody blocking it off. The railgun position and the main bounce pad are there to be exploited in this case, and you need to do that synchronized up. So the bounce pad position can be used to either get behind in and attack a guy defending the rail position. That's always a good option, to get in and draw fire away from people attacking from the rail position, or they can come in later after everyone's focusing on the guys coming in from rail position. So you got variants on what it's used for there, but either way you come in at a slightly different angle, though it's sort of along the same plane as you are from the rail gun position. When you attack an area, it's the same in any map. You want to be coordinated and do it at the same time, coming in from different angles at the same time, drawing fire away from your teammates. And the absolute key thing to do in this area, and any area when you attack it, is to survive as long as possible. even if you're
Yeah.
not dealing damage.
If you've worked your way in from rail, for example, and you've got this far without being killed, the last thing you would want to do is jump randomly across, thinking it's all clear. You need to be looking to use obstacles like this to fight around, because you don't know what's going to suddenly happen. Maybe you've got in here and you think, oh, there's only 2 people, but for all you know, they could have been with 2 people in here looking to try and push on quad, but then they get the call that someone's attacking from rail. So don't just assume that the room was lightly defended and we're already in and we can just jump around however we want. Use the objects in the room to actually shield yourself.
And of course they'll know that you're in and around the room, and they'll have to be cautious in return or really aggressive on you, in which case they're opening themselves up to a great counter shot.
Yeah, because you can expect to have rockets, and if you're fighting around this corner, someone jumps across to you, you might hit rockets in this sort of position, or you'll catch them if you've come this way instead. They might come all the way around the back. You catch them in this sort of area, but it's very hard for them to shoot you from the shotgun room or over to 50 health when you're hiding behind these. You just want to keep the attack going as long as possible. Normally, you're going to have people dying, but if you can just keep someone alive, keeping the attack going, dealing out damage still, then you've got the option of coming back. And the last thing you want to do is attack from here, jump in, one person dead instantly, and then the others are going to have to seriously think about whether or not they continue to come in. The last thing any team wants to do is pour in with multiple people, especially through the same entrance, and just have them all die.
Yeah, you're not going to really return too much damage if you just open yourselves up to shots. I mean, even if you're not going to be doing too much damage, the fact of your existence around this area is going to cause them to have to focus on you and not on the items, not farming, not on their defensive positions, and not on exploiting maybe your weaknesses at your control zones. So it's really important that you survive as long as possible when you attack these areas. And the thing is, unlike say Retribution, where it's really open and you don't have many options to survive a lot longer, here you have these great pillars everywhere and walls you can just dive behind. So it's really easy. Well, it's not easy, but you've got a lot more opportunities to survive longer. So the longer you survive, you might get time on the red. You spot it coming up. They might waste all their ammo. They might run out of ammo. This is a possibility. And of course, as Vor said, if your teammates die, but you're still alive in here, you're blocking them off from locking that door down, so your teammates can just spawn and then come that same route again and rush through again. And you've almost got a second wave of attack without even losing everybody.
Make sure you know roughly what everyone is going to do as well when they attack. You don't want, let's say, 3 people coming in and then they get in and they think about what they need to do. I mean, that's kind of hesitation or indecision would leave you in serious trouble. You should have an idea of, someone's going to go off immediately to the right, someone's going to go to the left. Obviously, there could be enemies here, in which case, you need to fight them or whatever. But have, goals. Maybe one person comes into this room specifically looking to try and steal the red. I mean, I didn't mean to jump straight down, but they'll be more focused on the red. Someone comes in, they're more focused on what's going on in this area. You want a plan of what you're doing. It's no good 3 people coming in and just hoping it all goes well. You want to have an idea of what you're looking to do.
And I mean, even if you don't discuss exactly what you're going to do before you move in, be aware of what your teammates are doing.
Yeah, pay attention to what the guy ahead of you's done. I mean, if someone comes in, go straight to the left. If you're the guy behind, don't go
to the left. Yeah, don't hug his body and start tickling his ass. Get right down to the right. Start aggressing on this rocket position. Then you've already split your team massively apart. I mean, the angles.
Yeah, they have to deal with you separately. I mean, if you both go the same way,
one rocket,
one stacked guy might just come in and mop both of you up in 2 rockets. Whereas if you're spread out, at least, first, we don't know what the positions of the enemy might be. They might have 2 people in there, so it might be 3v2 initially in here. And then if you're spread out in here, any supporting players, they have to deal with you separately. Just think about how you're going to do the attack. Even if you don't assign it specifically, if you're the guy coming in behind, pay attention to what the first guy does and then use your own brain to decide what would be a good decision based on what he does.
Is that everything, Vor? for this
I
map?
think it's just about.
I mean,
I mean,
there's
there's
so
just
much
so
more.
much other we can do, but as you say, it's already very long, I imagine, so far.
And it is an overview. We can't go into every tiny detail, but essentially, it's like any TDM map. It's all about timing of your attacks, etc. Looking at where your opponents and your teammates are in positions, making space, grabbing the right items, focusing on the power-ups. But one of the best, most tactical maps, most interesting to play, and I really encourage you, if you've managed